Remember that little gang of people we left on a twisted train trying to riddle their way to safety? We should probably see how they're getting on, right? Here are 19 reasons to read Wizard and Glass. Hi everyone, I'm Dave Musson at Dave Musson on Instagram, and as you probably know by now, this is the place where I'm going through the works of Stephen King in chronological order and giving you 19 reasons to read each one. If that sounds like something you'd like more of, then do have a look at the rest of my channel and maybe consider subscribing as well. We're back in the world of the Dark Tower in this video, and if you'd like to see my comprehensive guide to the Dark Tower, including all of the books that are connected to it and a suggested reading order for you to get the most out of your journey to the tower, then I'll stick it up there and you can go and watch it once you're done with this one, or now if you want to. So like I just said, we are back on the path to the Dark Tower in this video, 1997's Wizard and Glass. So I'm going to go through 19 reasons for you to read this one. As ever, I've clustered all the spoilery ones towards the end of the list, and I will let you know when those spoilery ones are coming so you can bail if you need to. But otherwise, let's jump in with 19 reasons to read this. So this one picks up where the Wastelands left off, with our quartet stuck on Blaine the Mono trying to riddle their way to safety. Now, I guess this is technically a spoiler, but it really isn't a spoiler for me to say that they get off the train. I mean, look how thick that book is. Not even Stephen King could spin that cliffhanger out for quite this amount of pages. Just be grateful that you didn't have to wait 6 years to find out what happened, which is what people would have had to have done if they were reading these books as they came out. So once they get off the train, our gang go on and explore the town of Topeka, which happens to be a mirror of Topeka, Kansas from the 1980s. Now this version of Topeka has been decimated by a little virus called Captain Trips. If you want to find out more about Captain Trips, then there's a book called The Stand which will help you with that. So onto the hook for this one, which is basically Roland's backstory. Yep, in a move that is so Stephen King you wouldn't quite believe it. He spends best part of 700 pages giving us backstory. So with his quartet sat around him, Roland hunkers down and tells the story of when he and his friends as teenagers were sent to the town of Hanbury in the barony of Magis, and all of the adventures that happened while they were out there. Basically, they live, laugh, love, and piss off a lot of people. It is quite the epic. So there's no doubt that this one is vital in really getting a thorough understanding of Roland. It certainly makes you like Roland a lot more by the time you're done with Wizard and Glass. And it's probably going to be a book that if you're reading it for the first time, you will absolutely love. For me, it didn't hit so hard second time around, but that could just be my personal preference. So we get to meet some new and important characters in this one. We meet Roland's pals, Cuthbert and Alain Johns, as well as the beautiful girl in the window, Susan Delgado, who Roland falls madly and sexily in love with. So the glass in the title of this one is a reference to the pink orb, a grapefruit coloured sphere of glass that in this book is in the possession of Rhea of the Coos. Yep, her from Eyes of the Dragon. And that crazy old witch is obsessed with it. The book also introduces us to some nice little bits of Dark Tower pop culture. Quite literally, when it comes to Nozzola, the alternative version of Coca-Cola, pop culture, fizzy pop, get it? Whatever. As well as a thinny, which is basically a part in reality that is, well, thin, kind of black hole thing that basically you don't want to stand too close to. We also get to meet the gang of baddies called the Big Coffin Hunters, who try to come across as these imposing, scary, dangerous people, but are actually sort of laughable failures who also happen to be incredibly dangerous. They all have a coffin tattooed on their hand as well, which admittedly is pretty badass. So once we get done hearing the story of Wizard and Glass, Roland and his current day quartet carry on with their journey and end up in the Emerald City, which is basically putting themselves in the Wizard of Oz. It's King being king again, shoving pop culture in your face so hard that you just cannot ignore it. But he does do it pretty well. Okay, so this is where we're going to enter spoiler zone, so feel free to leave if you want to avoid them. So this book is an emotional roller coaster, and what I mean by that is it will fucking ruin you. We get to see Roland fall in love with Susan, only for her to ultimately be captured and burnt alive like a witch. It is fucking harsh. as is the revelation that once back in Gilead, Roland mistakenly kills his own mother. No wonder he's such a miserable bastard. So when we meet Susan in this, she is in a tough position. She has been promised as the local mayor's gilly, essentially a hot young virgin for that mayor to go and sleep with because he's now bored of his wife. He is gross, especially in the scene where he comes up behind Susan while she's trying on a dress and basically creams his pants. No thanks. Didn't need to see that. If you want more grossness, then look no further than the scenes with Rhea, specifically where she is inspecting Susan to vouch for Susan's virginity, and then proceeds to just, well, molest the girl at that same point. It's fucking vile. Now, Susan ultimately loses that virginity to Roland, and in this book there is a lot of shagging. But something else Rhea does during that examination is she plants a hypnotic suggestion to Susan that upon losing her virginity, she should wake up and try and cut off all her hair. And she almost succeeds in doing it, only for Roland to wake and stop her. It's a bit of a weird one. So another person we meet in Wizard and Glass is a chap called Shimi. Now, I want you to remember Shimi because he becomes important a little later down the line, okay? So we've got Roland's pals, Cuthbert and Alain. Now Cuthbert is a loudmouth, a bit of a joker, quite a lot like Eddie Dean actually, while Alain is much more practical and thoughtful. As a trio, they work really well, and you can kind of understand why Roland was initially hesitant of having more than 3 people in his new quartet. So when our current quartet reach the Emerald City, who should they meet there? Well, it's Martin Broadcloak / Andrew Quick / Oz / Randall Flagg, who manages to escape just as Roland tries to shoot him. But he leaves behind the pink glass, and in that glass, that's where Roland's current quartet see what happened to Roland's mother. Now, the current quartet, upon seeing that and having just heard the story where basically everybody that Roland loves dies, you'd forgive them for just bailing at that point and thinking, nah, I don't want to hang around with this guy anymore. But as you will be at the end of this book, they are totally in on Roland and they are with him on the quest. So even seeing all of the tragedy that surrounds his life doesn't put them off. They stick with it. They are quartet. They are one from many. Now, if you've read The Stand and you're slightly confused with the timelines, don't worry, that's perfectly natural. The more popular version of The Stand, the uncut version, was set in 1990, which means there's this disparity between the timeline of that and the timeline of 1980's alternative Topeka being hit by Captain Trips. But it is worth remembering that the original version of The Stand was set in 1980, so that does kind of account for it. And also, don't forget, there are many levels on the tower, and there are other worlds than these. So lastly, this isn't really a reason as such, but I guess a request from me. I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts on Wizard and Glass if you've read it. As I mentioned earlier, I loved it first time around, but on reread, it really dropped in my rankings. But I'm aware that that could just be me. I know that a lot of people would put Wizard and Glass as their favourite Dark Tower book, if not their favourite Stephen King book. So it probably does just come down to personal preference, but let me know what you think. All that being said, trying to be as objective as possible, this is a vital part of the journey to the Dark Tower. It's hugely important in understanding Roland, and you definitely need to read it if you are making that pilgrimage yourself. Okay, there we go, 19 reasons to read Wizard and Glass. As I just said, do let me know what you think of this book in the comments if you've read it, and let me know what you think of my review of it as well. While you're doing things that are nice for my channel, consider hitting subscribe if you haven't already, then you won't miss any future videos. And, just click around. There's more videos of books to look at, and there's a few specials as well. Don't forget my Dark Tower special. I'll pop that up there again, just in case you missed it first time around. Lastly, if you want to come and say hi on Instagram, I'm at Dave Musson. I'm always happy to chat and hear from you if you've got any suggestions for videos you might like to see me do in the future. Thanks as ever for stopping by. See you again soon. Long days and pleasant nights.